I had always been a creature of habit, finding comfort in the predictable rhythms of life. So, when I decided to leave my bustling city life for a quieter existence in a small town, it felt like stepping into an unknown world. The house that I chose, nestled at the end of a sleepy street, was old but charming, with creaky wooden floors and a cozy fireplace in the living room. It was the perfect place for a freelance writer like me, seeking solitude and inspiration. From the moment I stepped inside, I felt an odd sense of anticipation, as if the house itself was waiting for something to happen. It was an irrational thought, I knew, but it lingered in the back of my mind, unshakable. The real estate agent had mentioned that the house was a bargain due to its age and peculiar history, but I didn't pay much attention. I was too enamored with the idea of having my own space, a haven where I could write undisturbed. The first few days were uneventful, filled with the mundane tasks of unpacking and settling in. I set up my writing desk by the window overlooking the garden, a picturesque view that I hoped would spark my creativity. The house was peaceful, its silence only broken by the occasional creaking of floorboards or the whispering wind outside. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to notice small anomalies. A book placed on the shelf would appear on the coffee table the next morning. A door I was sure I had closed would be ajar when I passed by it again. I shrugged these occurrences off as forgetfulness, the side effect of being immersed in my writing. Then, one night, everything changed. I woke up to a strange feeling, an inexplicable sense of disorientation. The house was silent, the kind of oppressive silence that feels like a weight pressing down on your chest. I lay there for a moment, trying to shake off the remnants of a dream I couldn't quite remember. Then, I noticed it. The door to my bedroom was slightly open, revealing a sliver of the dark hallway outside. I was certain I had closed it before going to bed. With a sense of unease, I got out of bed and walked towards the door. The wooden floor was cold under my feet, each step echoing softly in the stillness. As I reached the door, a chill ran down my spine. The hallway, which should have led straight to the living room, now extended far beyond what was architecturally possible. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. But the impossible hallway remained, stretching into darkness, lined with unfamiliar paintings, and dimly lit by flickering sconces. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped into the corridor, half expecting it to revert to normal with each step. But it didn't. I walked slowly, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet that now covered the floor. The air was heavy, filled with the musty scent of old wood and something else, something faintly metallic. The paintings on the wall were eerie, depicting shadowy landscapes and distorted faces that seemed to watch me as I passed. As I ventured deeper, the hallway twisted and turned, leading me through a series of doors and rooms that defied the layout of my house. Each room was more bizarre than the last. A library with books that whispered when you weren't looking, a conservatory where the plants seemed to move just out of the corner of your eye, a dining room set for a feast with rotting food. I felt like a rat in a maze, each turn bringing me further from the reality I knew. Panic began to set in. I tried to backtrack, to find my way back to my bedroom, but the house seemed to shift around me, doors leading to different places each time I went through them. Just when I thought I was lost forever, I stumbled into a room that was starkly bare compared to the others. In the center, under a single beam of moonlight streaming through a crack in the ceiling, was an old wooden desk. On it lay a diary, its leather cover worn and pages yellowed with age. I approached it hesitantly, a sense of foreboding washing over me. My fingers traced the embossed title, The Secrets of the Shifting House, before I opened it. The diary belonged to someone named Eleanor, a previous occupant of the house. Her entries started off mundane, detailing her life in the house. But as I flipped through the pages, the tone shifted. Eleanor wrote about the house changing, just like I had experienced. She described her fear and confusion, how doors would lead to different places, how rooms appeared and disappeared. She believed the house was alive, a sentient being that fed on the emotions of its inhabitants. According to her, the house's layout was a reflection of one's mind, constantly shifting in response to their thoughts and feelings. It was a chilling thought, the idea that the house was not just a structure of wood and brick, but something far more sinister. Eleanor's final entries were frantic, scribbled in shaky handwriting. She claimed to have found the heart of the house, a room where its power was the strongest. But the pages detailing how to find it were torn out, leaving me with more questions than answers. I closed the diary, my mind racing. The house was more than just a building, it was a living, breathing entity with a mind of its own. And I was trapped inside it. Fear gripped me, the realization that I was at the mercy of this malevolent structure. With a deep breath, I steeled myself. I had to find a way out, to escape the ever-shifting walls of this nightmare. The diary was my only clue, my only hope of understanding how to survive this house. As I left the room, the hallway had changed again, the walls now lined with mirrors that reflected a distorted version of myself. I pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of the shifting house, and find my way back to the world I knew. I wandered through the labyrinth of the house, each room stranger than the last. The mirrors lining the hallway seemed to stretch and contort my reflection, turning my familiar features into something grotesque. I avoided looking at them, focusing instead on the search for an escape. The house was toying with me, I realized. Every time I thought I had found a way back to my bedroom or the front door, the layout would shift, leading me further into its depths. I stumbled upon rooms that defied logic, a kitchen with an endlessly long table, a bathroom where the taps ran with thick black liquid, a nursery with dolls that seemed to whisper secrets in the dark. As the hours passed, my initial fear turned to desperation. I was a rat in a trap, a plaything for the house's amusement. I clung to the diary, rereading Eleanor's frantic words, searching for a clue, any clue, that might help me understand how to break free from this nightmare. Then, amidst the chaos, I found something that stopped me in my tracks. A room that looked ordinary, almost disappointingly so, with plain walls and a simple bed. But on the bedside table was a photograph of a family, smiling and happy. It was my family. My parents, who had passed away years ago, and my younger sister, who I hadn't seen since I moved out. The sight of the photo filled me with an aching sense of nostalgia and sorrow. It was a cruel trick of the house, a stab at my most vulnerable emotions. I picked up the photo, studying the faces of my loved ones, and a tear rolled down my cheek. That's when I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper, coming from the photo itself. I leaned in closer, and the whispers became clear. They were voices, my family's voices, calling out to me, begging me to join them. The rational part of my mind screamed that it was impossible, a hallucination caused by the stress and fear. But another part, a deeper, more primal part, wanted to believe. Wanted to reach out and be reunited with my lost family. I shook my head, forcing myself to look away from the photo. The voices faded, replaced by the eerie silence of the house. I placed the photo back on the table, a part of me longing to hear those voices again, but knowing that it was just another of the house's manipulations. I left the room, my resolve strengthened. The house was playing with my mind, using my memories and fears against me. But I wouldn't let it break me. I had to keep moving, to find the heart of the house and confront whatever malevolent force was controlling it. The diary was my guide, Eleanor's words a beacon in the darkness. I clutched it tightly as I ventured deeper into the shifting maze, determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of this haunted house. With each step, the house seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, as if it were alive and aware of my presence. The corridors twisted and turned in impossible ways, leading me through a series of surreal landscapes that defied all logic. In one room, the walls were covered in what looked like human eyes, blinking and following my every move. In another, the ceiling dripped with a substance that glowed faintly in the dim light, casting eerie shadows on the floor. I clung to Eleanor's diary like a lifeline, her words the only thing keeping me anchored in this sea of madness. She wrote of similar experiences, of rooms that played on her deepest fears and darkest memories. It was as if the house fed on these emotions, growing stronger with each moment of terror and despair. As I navigated the ever-changing labyrinth, I began to notice patterns in the chaos. Certain rooms would reappear, though always in different locations and with subtle changes. A library with shelves that stretched up into the darkness, the titles of the books gibberish and constantly shifting. The garden with plants that seemed to whisper among themselves, their leaves rustling even though there was no wind. It was in this garden that I found the first real clue. Hidden among the foliage was a statue, half covered in ivy. It depicted a figure, neither male nor female, with its face turned upwards in an expression of agony. At its base was an inscription, worn but still legible. The heart of the house lies within, but only those who face their fears may enter. The words sent a chill down my spine. Face my fears. The house was not just a random collection of rooms and corridors, it was a test, a challenge that I had to overcome. I needed to confront whatever horrors it threw at me, to prove that I was not just another victim of its cruel games. Armed with this new understanding, I pressed on, my determination renewed. The diary mentioned a series of trials, tests that Eleanor had faced in her quest to find the heart of the house. I prepared myself for what was to come, knowing that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and terror. I encountered rooms that played on my deepest insecurities, my most painful memories. The classroom where I was perpetually late and unprepared for an exam, the other students' faces twisted into grotesque caricatures of mockery. A hospital room where I was forced to relive the final moments of my parents' lives, their voices filled with disappointment and regret. With each challenge, I felt a piece of my sanity slip away, the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurring into one. But I refused to give in to the fear. I clung to the memory of Eleanor's words, her conviction that there was a way out, a way to defeat the house. And then, just when I thought I had reached my limit, the house revealed its final challenge. The corridor opened up into a vast, dimly lit hall, its walls lined with mirrors. Unlike the twisted reflections I had encountered before, these mirrors showed me not as I was, but as I could have been. In one, I was a successful author, my books bestsellers, my face beaming with pride. In another, I was surrounded by a loving family, children playing at my feet. Each reflection showed a different path my life could have taken, a different version of me that could have existed. It was a cruel illusion, designed to prey on my deepest regrets and what-ifs. The temptation to lose myself in these false realities was overwhelming, each one promising a life free from the pain and loneliness I had known. But I remembered Eleanor's words, her warning that the house would try to trap me in my own mind, to feed on my longing for what could never be. With a heavy heart, I turned away from the mirrors, focusing on the path ahead. As I walked, the hall began to change. The mirrors cracked and shattered, revealing glimpses of something else behind them. A darkness that seemed to stretch on forever, a void that threatened to swallow me whole. I realized then that this was the final test. The house was showing me the ultimate fear, the fear of the unknown, of what lay beyond life and death. It was a fear that had always lingered in the back of my mind, a shadow that followed me through every moment of my existence. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the terror that clawed at my mind. I had come too far to give in now. With each step, I repeated Eleanor's mantra, a chant that gave me strength in the face of the abyss. The heart of the house lies within. Face your fears. Find the truth. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the hall ended. I found myself standing in front of a door, plain and unassuming, so different from the horrors I had just faced. I knew instinctively that this was it, the heart of the house, the source of its power. With a trembling hand, I reached for the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what I would find on the other side, but I knew that there was no turning back. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of my journey through the shifting halls of this nightmare. I opened the door. As the door creaked open, a rush of cold air hit me, sending shivers down my spine. I stepped into a room that was starkly different from the rest of the house. It was circular, the walls lined with shelves filled with ancient books and artifacts, illuminated by a dim, flickering light from above. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it, a crystal orb pulsating with a soft, eerie glow. I approached the orb cautiously, my eyes fixed on its mesmerizing light. As I drew closer, the air around me grew colder, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I could feel the power emanating from the orb, a force so intense it was almost tangible. I reached out to touch it, and as my fingers brushed against the smooth surface, a surge of energy coursed through my body. Visions flashed before my eyes, scenes of the house's past. I saw its construction, the hands that built it, the families that lived and died within its walls. I saw Eleanor, her face etched with fear and determination, just like mine. The visions shifted, showing me the house's true nature. It wasn't just a building, it was a sentient being, born from the collective emotions of all who had dwelled within it. It fed on their fears, their desires, their regrets, growing stronger with each passing year. I understood then what I had to do. The house was a prison, not just for me, but for the souls of those who had never escaped its grasp. I had to break the cycle, to free myself and the others trapped in this endless nightmare. With a newfound resolve, I focused my thoughts on the orb, channeling all my fear, anger, and determination into it. The room began to shake, books and artifacts tumbling from the shelves as the house itself seemed to scream in protest. The orb pulsed faster, its light growing brighter with each passing second. I could feel the house fighting back, its energy trying to overwhelm me, to keep me trapped in its twisted reality. But I held on, pouring every ounce of my will into the orb. Images of my life outside the house flashed through my mind, the sunny days spent riding in the park, laughter-filled evenings with friends, the quiet moments of contentment in my solitude. I clung to these memories, using them as a shield against the darkness. Then, with a final deafening roar, the orb shattered, releasing a blinding light that engulfed the room. I felt myself being lifted, the weight of the house's presence dissipating as the light consumed everything. When the light faded, I found myself lying on the floor of my bedroom, the morning sun streaming through the window. For a moment, I lay there, disoriented, trying to process what had happened. Then, slowly, I got up and walked to the door. It opened to my living room, just as it should. The house was silent, its once ominous presence now just a normal, empty building. I walked through each room, finding everything as I had left it, no sign of the shifting walls or eerie corridors. I packed my things, eager to leave this place behind. As I carried my suitcase to the front door, I paused, looking back at the house. It was just a house now, but I knew that what had happened here would stay with me forever. With one last look, I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. The sun felt warm on my face, a stark contrast to the cold darkness of the house. I took a deep breath, savoring the feeling of freedom. But as I walked away, a chill ran down my spine. The house may have released me, but the memories of what I had experienced lingered. And deep down, I knew that the house was still there, waiting for its next victim. For now, it was dormant, but who knew when it would awaken again, hungry for more. I wandered through the quiet streets of the town, the normalcy of the world around me feeling surreal after what I had experienced. People went about their daily lives, oblivious to the nightmare I had just escaped. The sun shone brightly, children laughed in the distance, and birds chirped in the trees. It all seemed so incredibly ordinary, yet I felt disconnected, as if a part of me was still trapped within the walls of that house. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was still watching me, its presence lingering at the edge of my consciousness. Every shadow seemed darker, every whisper of wind a silent echo of the house's voice. The ordeal had changed me, leaving an indelible mark on my soul. I found a small cafe and sat at a table outside, a steaming cup of coffee in front of me. As I sipped the bitter brew, I mulled over everything that had happened. The house had fed on my fears, but in facing them, I had found a strength I didn't know I possessed. Eleanor's diary, now resting in my bag, felt like a trophy, a testament to my survival. Yet, victory didn't feel sweet. The memories of the shifting rooms, the twisted visions, and the eerie silence of the house haunted me. I knew that the experience would fuel nightmares for years to come. I wondered about Eleanor and the others who had lived in that house. Had they escaped as I did, or were they still trapped, forever lost in its ever-changing maze? The sound of the cafe door opening snapped me out of my reverie. A group of teenagers entered, laughing and joking among themselves. They represented a life untouched by the horrors I had witnessed, a reminder of the innocence I had lost. I watched them for a moment, envying their carefree demeanor, then turned my gaze back to the street. I realized then that my ordeal in the house had given me a new perspective on life. The everyday worries that had once seemed so important now felt trivial in comparison to the terror I had faced. I had stared into the abyss and come out alive, and that knowledge gave me a sense of resilience, a feeling that I could face whatever challenges life threw my way. But there was also a sense of isolation, a feeling that I had been touched by something otherworldly, something that set me apart from those around me. I wondered if I would ever be able to share my story, to make others understand what I had been through. Probably not. It was too unbelievable, too far removed from the realm of normal experience. As the day turned to evening, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in that town, with the house lurking in the shadows of my mind. I needed to move on, to put as much distance between myself and that place as possible. I paid for my coffee and left the cafe, a sense of purpose guiding my steps. I booked a room at a small motel for the night, planning to leave first thing in the morning. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the events in the house replayed in my mind. The eerie corridors, the surreal rooms, the haunting visions, they all seemed like a bad dream now. But the diary lying on the bedside table was a tangible reminder that it had all been real. Sleep was elusive, each creak and groan of the motel stirring memories of the house. When I did manage to drift off, my dreams were filled with twisting corridors and shifting walls. I woke up several times, drenched in sweat, the echoes of the house's whispers still ringing in my ears. Morning couldn't come soon enough. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I packed my bag and checked out of the motel. The open road ahead was a welcome sight, a path leading away from the past, and towards an uncertain but hopeful future. As I drove, the town and the house became distant memories, receding in the rearview mirror. But I knew that some part of me would always be haunted by what I had experienced. The house had shown me the depths of my fears, the fragility of my mind. It was a lesson I would carry with me always, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of the world. But I also carried with me the knowledge that I had faced that darkness and survived. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. And as the miles rolled by, I began to feel a sense of peace, a quiet acceptance of the journey I had been through. The road ahead was open, filled with possibilities. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in a long time, that uncertainty didn't scare me. I was ready for whatever came next, armed with the strength I had found within the walls of that shifting house.